So I'm going to start out a little blunter than Miss Camille, and I'm going to just say, I think God hates walls. In our last series on the walls between us, last week, we considered the social, particularly those walls of wealth and of race that exist. Today we're going to go a little more personal. Why do people build walls in their lives? Why do you build walls in your life? Now, I can't speak for you, but I know that when I tend to build walls up, it's because I don't feel safe, or I feel threatened by what I think somebody might do, or maybe what they've done. It's a common human response when we want to protect ourselves. So I'd like you to listen to the birth story of one of the greatest wall builders of all time.
Rebecca became pregnant, but the boys pushed against each other inside of her, and she said, "If this is what it's like, why did it happen to me?" So she went and asked the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two different peoples will emerge from your body. One people will be stronger than the other. The older will serve the younger." When she reached the end of her pregnancy, she discovered that she had twins. The first came out red all over, clothed with hair, and she named him Esau. Immediately afterward, his brother came out grabbing Esau's heel, and she named him Jacob.
So as the story goes, Jacob was born literally grabbing on to his brother's leg. And his name, Jacob, so for all of you who are either named Jacob or you have kids named Jacob, it means the grabber. You know the phrase, "I'm pulling your leg"? This is where that phrase comes from. When you say something where you're trying to fool somebody or deceive somebody like Jacob did, that's the story of Jacob the grabber. Now, as the second born, Jacob was supposed to receive a fraction of the inheritance from his father Isaac. And that's just how the custom was. But this family was also messed up in some really special ways. As a child, Jacob learned a few things right away. One was that his father, Isaac, loved his older brother more than he loved him. Like in a lot of families, when one parent tends to favor one of the kids, the other parent sort of claims the other. It's an old story. Rebecca and Isaac, as parents, they could have called each other on it, pointed out that this was dividing their family, and they could have changed the dynamic. But they didn't. And Jacob, the grabber, grew up knowing that if he wanted the good stuff in life, if he wanted what he felt was his due, he was going to have to take it, grab hold of it however he could. So as Jacob and Esau grew up, Jacob's first cons Esau into giving him the firstborn share of the inheritance. Then later, when their father Esau was getting frail, this happened.
When Isaac had grown old and his eyesight was failing, he summoned his older son Esau and said to him, "My son," he said, and Esau said, "I'm here." He said, "I'm old and don't know when I will die. So now take your hunting gear, your bow and quiver of arrows. Go out to the field and hunt game for me. Make me the delicious food that I love and bring it to me so I can eat. Then I can bless you before I die." Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau.
So Rebekah and Jacob come up with a plot to steal their father's blessing in a con job in which Jacob pretends to be his older brother, and Isaac is too old and blind to know the difference. Because the lesson that Jacob knows is that if you want the good stuff in life, then you have to grab it, take it. Now, Esau, he has now been cheated, conned twice. And he wants to kill his younger brother. So Rebekah, knowing this, she sends Jacob way up north to stay with her family and to settle up there. You know, for me, some of the most heartbreaking things that I see are when families tear each other up over inheritance. And it happens way too much. Anyway, Jacob flees north. He gets married. He has 12 sons that are going to go on to become the 12 tribes of Israel. And he gets very, very rich because he does what he does and he cons his uncle out of a bunch of money. And have you ever noticed that when people get rich by cheating, they never seem satisfied with it? Even when they get the thing that they think they set out to want, it's kind of like they're trying to fill some hole that they've got in their life. And that's Jacob. He spent his entire life trying to get the good stuff, what he feels like he was owed. Maybe he was destined to even have it. But what he really needs is he needs to be healed. What he really needs is to find some peace inside himself. So one night in a dream, Jacob receives a message from God to go home again. Now, Jacob's entire life, he has been building up walls to protect him. Protect him from the people that he's cheated, he's conned, who could threaten him. And now God's Spirit is pushing him back to go back to the brother who wanted to kill him. And after all the conning he's done with his family up north, he's probably thinking it's probably not a bad idea to build a little wall there, a little distance, and head back down south. So he does that. And his brother Esau hears that Jacob's coming down south and goes out to meet him with 400 men. Jacob figures that's not a good sign. So he does what he does, and he creates walls. So as he's moving toward his brother, the first wall he creates is a wall of livestock. Because he figures with 400 people, they'd have to kind of wade through the livestock and all the livestock stuff, and that would kind of slow him down a little bit. And being a man of courage, Joseph also does what you would expect. He sends the women and children first. And this is even how messed up it gets. As he sends the family out, he keeps his favorites in the back. So you know where you stand in favoritism by where you're at in line. He sends his wife Leah up ahead of the love of his life, Rachel. It's kind of cold. Families tend to repeat the same kind of dysfunctions generation after generation. And you'd think that when you see the hurt that happened in one generation for something like favoritism like that the next generation would do things differently. But that doesn't just happen. That kind of work takes change because what we learn really early on. So Jacob, he's got everything lined up, and then night comes. And a man finds Jacob sleeping by the river and grabs hold of him and begins to fight with him. And who do you think that Jacob thinks that guy is? Esau. He thinks Esau has found him. But the truth is that the first wall that Jacob needs to be worried about to tear down is not the wall with Esau or his family. Because a long time back, Jacob built a wall between himself and God. So Jacob that night, he wrestles all night with God in a human form. And he can't beat God. And God can't beat him. The truth is that God can't beat any of us. If you want to avoid or deny God, you can do that. Anyone can. But God will never let you go. So they wrestle all night long. And God wounds Jacob, hurts his leg, tears a muscle in his thigh. And still, Jacob the grabber will not let go. So Jacob goes back to doing what he does. If you want something, then you take it. So he demands a blessing. And the man, the God that he's wrestling with, asks him, "What's your name?" He is Jacob the grabber. A man who has spent his life trying to seize, to grab hold of the good stuff that he feels like he's owed. And now he's demanding, trying to grab a blessing. But here's the thing. The blessing of God that was granted to Abraham, that came to Jacob as Jacob's father, and then that blessing is not a blessing to them. It is a blessing to them to then in turn be a blessing to all the families of the earth. Jacob never learned that last part. He just wanted the good stuff, the blessing. Blessing doesn't mean that bad stuff isn't going to happen to you. Blessing doesn't mean that you're not going to be hurt sometimes. But blessing is rooted in this sense of gratitude for the gift of life, with the commitment to use whatever gifts that you have, all of the differences that you have, in service to others. Jacob spent his life using his strength and his cunning to grab what he wanted for himself. But in that fight, Jacob receives a new name. He is named Israel, the one who clings to God, who wrestles with God. The wall that he had built with God begins to come down. And after a lifetime of grabbing, trying to win for yourself, something happens that night, and maybe he's going to try a little humility. Maybe he's going to try a little vulnerability. He's hurt after all. Jacob is wounded and given a new name. And he's given a new opportunity for healing and for growth. And so the next day when he goes to meet his brother Esau, there's no tricks this time. No con. He sees the face of God in this one that he thought was an enemy. And he finds a brother. And it's the start of a process of healing and reconciliation. And it's a big step. But of course, it's not the only step. Because true reconciliation, true deep changes in life, changes with family dysfunction, with addictions, they don't magically happen in a night. There can be those sacred moments of epiphany, of realization, but the work takes a lifetime. Being church is being a community that goes with you and encourages you on these kinds of journeys. Being church is about respect and learning to work together. And Jesus gave his church rules for learning how to deal with the conflicts in that community, in the relationships, so that they don't lead to the kind of dysfunction that is part so many workplaces, there's so many homes and families. Because even in the best churches, in the best families, things can go sideways.
If your brother or sister sins against you, go and correct them when you are alone together.
This is so important. When you are feeling a wall come up, when you feel that frustration that is building inside of you with someone else, go to that person. Not to Facebook, not to your mom, not to your pastor, not to your boss. Go to that person.
If they listen to you, then you've won over your brother or sister. But if they won't listen, take with you one or two others, so that every word may be established by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. But if they still won't pay attention, report it to the church. If they won't pay attention even to the church, treat them as you would a Gentile and tax collector.
So if that person listens, great. You worked it out. Your relationship is intact. And if you're unsuccessful, try again with a third party. If there are walls that are going up in your marriage, if you're feeling distant from your children, a single fishing trip is probably not going to fix it. You may need counseling, wisdom, and help from others. And if it comes down to you needing to separate yourself, to split up, even then, and Jesus is very particular about how he puts this, treat that person as if they were a Gentile and a tax collector. And you know how Jesus felt about them. They were the ones that he would never let go of wanting to have a relationship with. Don't close yourself too easily off from the possibility of some kind of reconciliation. The thing that Jacob didn't get, for all that time that he spent jealously wanting what he saw with other people, he missed that you are blessed to be a blessing. The purpose of this church community, this purpose of a newly baptized boy, he's got some ideas on that front, is that you are blessed so that you can be a blessing to the world. And so we need to be humble and maybe even a little vulnerable with each other and with God. And it starts by tearing down any wall that may divide us. Will you pray with me? God, how are we doing? Are we making a difference proclaiming peace and justice? Are we reaching out in care to all people? Are we working for the healing of people in this world? On this Pentecost Sunday, continue to send your Spirit and to teach us how to be your church. Amen. Can we all rise together now and join our voices in singing, Yesu, Yesu, fill us with your love.